So welcome, Francisco, to the Anger Company podcast. Thank you for doing this, by the way.
No problem.
Francisco, I wanted to interview you because I feel like you have a really good inspirational story that I think the world needs to hear. But just a little bit about how we know each other. We actually went to high school together, Marian Catholic High School, Chicago Heights, almost 10 years ago. Which is
getting old.
Yeah, we're getting very, very old. But since then, I know that you were very ambitious and clear-headed. So to see where you are now is just phenomenal. So before we get into the big questions, Francisco, if you could just sort of tell the audience what you're doing now and how you got here. What's your backstory? If we can go back that far.
Yeah, no, we can. Nobody ever asked that part, so that's interesting for me. So currently, I'm a data scientist at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, where we're trying to essentially develop credit lending in emerging markets. So places like sub-Saharan South Africa, Indonesia, China, parts of India, and so on. So it's pretty interesting in that, data science is obsessed with data and analytics and empiricism. It isn't so clear-cut in those regions because that doesn't exist.
Right.
So our team, which is brand new, I was the first to join, mission is to make that happen.
Okay.
And so there have been a lot of challenges with that the last year. But, with great challenges come great rewards, right? And so that's been the really fun part is, seeing things come to fruition. And we're making things happen. We'll be launching a full blank this coming January. So it's pretty exciting. And being on the strategy side and thinking about product development as well as, analytics is interesting. So, that's what I do professionally. I'm also a part-time student at Columbia doing my second master's in data science, which is essentially a statistics and computer science. Most of my coursework has been in computer science because, my first master's in economics and statistics, so it'd be redundant. So, so I'm a bit of a nerd in that sense.
It's okay.
We met 10 years ago back in high school, and high school was a strange time for me for many, many reasons. When I'm sure you remember, I got kicked out my senior year. I was a kind of a rough kid around the edges, at least. I think I came from the south side of Chicago, and not the greatest area. We used to we grew up in the city, and then or in like the southeast side, practically Gary, if you know where that is. And my parents aren't very well educated, but God bless them, they did the best they could for us. And I grew up in a rougher neighborhood, and I think that caused a lot of psychological consequences. Right?
Okay.
So I think growing up, I felt very isolated. I felt like I didn't belong, and it made for not the most stable child at the time. And so I think I was always lashing out against authority, against myself, against my parents. And then, after getting kicked out of grade school and almost kicked out of high school, I got my act together when I got arrested in high school.
Okay.
And, I remember it essentially threw me in a psychiatric ward.
Oh, wow.
It got so bad. And I met a young woman there that was addicted to heroin.
Oh, wow.
And, I think I was a good kid. At heart, I was a good kid, but I was just very misguided. I'd been through so much junk that I couldn't see past it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember speaking with her for about an hour. We had a pretty long conversation. And at one point, she tells me, "Thank you. Because of you, I'm not going to do drugs again." And I'll never forget that. And then maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I don't know. I never followed up with her. But that very fact that I could actually impact someone, that I could in some way do good to someone, really changed me.
Wow.
I was doing terrible in school. I was stoned all the time. So I was drunk. And then after that happened, I stopped.
Wow.
Just everything.
Just like that.
Yeah. And then so I started, I was working my way through high school as well, kind of helping out my family. because my mother lost her job, unfortunately, when I was 16, and so I kind of helped chip in, and I just changed. I just changed so much. I started working a ton at school, as well as work regular. I worked about 35 hours a week, sometimes more, just at Jewel Law School, pushing cards. And then, started studying really hard in school. I did a lot better. And then it came the summer, and I realized that, I was fortunate enough to get accepted to college. That was, not the best college in the world, but it was one that accepted me. So God bless for that. And, I just realized that maybe I could do something. Maybe I didn't have to be a piece of shit. And people that don't go to college and that don't make a lot of money or anything, they're not bad people.
Right.
But for some reason, in my head at that time, I thought, hey, look, if I do those things, that'll be good.
Okay.
Maybe that's how I can prove worth. And so that's what I pursued. And then I graduated college while working full-time a semester early, and then I went to graduate school where I finished graduate school a year early. I didn't sleep through any of that 4.5 years.
Of course.
And I was broke, and there were some hard times. There were some really hard times when things would go bad, and I was the only one that I could only rely on myself financially, and that was scary. But I managed to get through it. And then, luck would have it when I got my first job offer after applying for 110 jobs.
Whoa.
Doing something to the likes of 40 phone screens, 10 in-person interviews.
Yeah.
I got 2 job offers.
Wow.
One in Chicago, one in New York. And I'd never been to New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd never been to New York before my job interview. But, I remember I walked out onto Madison Square Garden, and I already had an offer from that company in Chicago. And I sit in the park, and I see the Empire State Building, and I say, wow, I'm going to end up in New York.
Yeah.
And I did. I took the job. Economically, they were about the same. And it wasn't a ton of money at my first job, but it was reasonably good. I was starting out, right? And, then I got lucky. I got pulled into a company, into AIG, and I worked with their team of data scientists, which was a much more elite team than I think I was qualified for, but for some reason they accepted me.
Yeah.
And that very decision really, really made my career take off quite a bit. I get reached out to a ton by different firms.
Yeah.
Who knows how long that'll last? But for now, it'll be nice. And I'll never forget it. It was one guy in particular who took interest in me, and he kind of really set the groundwork for my career. This gentleman Hafton, he's absolutely wonderful. He's chief data scientist at another company somewhere else, and he just took interest in me. If not for him, things could be very different. He wrote me a letter of recommendation for Columbia. He, kind of nurtured me and helped me become much better at what I do now and how I present. And just gave me so much guidance. And then I moved here to Commonwealth Bank, where I actually had the option to work again for Hafton at the company. And I turned him down so I could work here because I really cared about the mission we have here at Commonwealth Bank.
Right.
And it's been a crazy, crazy journey. It's been crazy, 26 years, I guess.
Yeah.
It's weird thinking about, where I was even, 6 years ago? Wow. 6 years ago, I was delivering a pizza to somebody at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Friday.
Wow.
And, sometimes it is really, really surreal.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's scary in a way because you just think that you don't deserve it, and you think it's oh shit, they could fire me any time, and maybe they will. Right? But but it's been a cool experience, right? So I'll always be thankful for that.
And Francisco, it's one thing that I think you and I both have in common is that we really love New York City, and I think it's changed us dramatically. So what is what's the life lesson you've learned in New York City that you don't think you can learn anywhere else?
Jesus. It's almost corny, but everybody thinks they're the center of the universe. Everybody thinks their work is important.
Yep.
And it's not.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I work very hard, relentlessly at everything I do.
Yep.
Whether it's going to the gym, spending time with my girlfriend, my work at my office, when I work at home, or my schoolwork, or potentially starting side projects. I give it 110%, and I am very well aware of the fact that none of it matters. But I think what you find out about New York is that most people think everything matters.
Yep.
And some people forget that it doesn't. And I think the check that brought me to that conclusion was when my little brother died.
Yeah.
Because I had all these career goals and career ambitions, and I realized after I lost him, it's like, it doesn't matter. You do all these things, and they're super important, but fundamentally, we're all hamsters spinning a goddamn hamster wheel. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't say that in a morbid way. I say that in this way that's liberating.
Yeah.
Because when you accept that, you're not burdened by this distress when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Because stuff is gonna go wrong.
Yep.
Stuff goes wrong for me all the time. I fail a lot more than I succeed.
Yep.
And then that's a good thing. Because if you're not failing, then you're not trying.
Yeah.
But sometimes failing is discouraging. But if you keep in mind the fact that in the grand scheme of things, it's only a test, or only a job, or only a presentation, or only a meeting, then you'll be a lot more happy later on. And that's the stuff that matters.
Yeah.
Spending time with your family, your friends, the people you care about. That's the stuff that's mission critical.
Right. And Francisco, how did you overcome the loss of your little brother? And for little brother, we mean it's an organization, big brother, big sister in New York City, and you were a big brother for 3 years.
Yes, I was a big brother for just about 3 years. Erica and I met back when I first moved here. The first thing I did was reach out to a bunch of different organizations, because I like volunteering, and so I wanted to volunteer for whatever I could.
Yeah.
2 things came up in particular. One, teaching GED classes, and my father did his GED, and so I thought I'd pay it forward, I guess, and do the same, and become a big brother of New York City, and we were together for 3 years. He was 11 years old when he passed away.
Yep.
Or was hit by a car, and to be honest with you, I didn't overcome it. I'm still not over it. It's still something that actually, just this weekend, I was weeping about it. I never cried, and I wasn't really a crier for the last 10 years since I've been an adult. But if I think about it long enough, I'll cry, surely. And if I think about it too long, I'll weep in a corner. I haven't gotten over it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever will.
Yeah.
I think I've learned to keep my composure, but I have so many emotions of distress and pain that I would never be able to get past them or even explain them to you.
And Francisco, just going off of, it sounded like you always had a vision for yourself in some way, after you sort of hit that breakthrough. How do you go about maintaining goals for yourself? Even when you put things in perspective, how do you not get complacent and still stay on your mission?
That's a really good question. I don't know. And so I mentioned the hamster cage thing. Because it's funny. It's something I used to really believe in. It's just like, I always used to tell the story. It's like, hey, look, fundamentally we're all hamsters, right? We all spin our little hamster wheel. And for no reason. We spin it. Some of us spin it really hard, some of us spin it really slow. And me personally, I get a lot of happiness from just spinning it really fast. Even if I know I'm not going anywhere. I just like working hard, just for the sake of spinning it, right? Because isn't that something interesting? To enjoy hard work for the sake of hard work. So I think my motivation comes from just that. I like, growing up, my father was telling me, no matter what you do, just try to be the best at it. You know, you don't have to be. It's not about being better than other people. That's a different epistemology, right? It's a belief system. If it's about doing the best that you can do, right? Just give it your all. And if you fail, that happens.
Right.
That's life. But you try. You try every day. And that's kind of how I keep it up. You know, I just keep saying, no, I can do better because I simply want to.
Right.
And I think that sort of philosophy helps you prevent against, bad stuff and not being able to accept it when you fail.
Okay. And Francisco, I know, obviously been knowing you for a while, and one thing that I really admire about you, and I think something that we both have in common, is that we love education, and we love, sort of just diving into our art, so to speak, as much as we can. And my passion came, by happenstance. I didn't know that I was going to like, what my career. I knew I was going to be in consulting, but I didn't know that I was going to like the section of the consulting that I work in. But where did you always know that you wanted to be a data scientist or sort of work in the current field that you're in now?
God, no. I did stumble into it. I started off in econ. My undergraduate was in economics. And then, I really liked harder classes. And so my senior year, or my last semester rather, I took a master's level econometrics course, which is like, heavy math stat. And I realized, like, oh, this is cool. Let me do more of this. And when I was in graduate school, I did nothing but doctoral courses in econometrics because I had the opportunity to. And so I was like, yeah, let me do this. And that was brutal. God, it was so hard. I didn't sleep for months. And I remember one night I woke up in a panic reciting X transpose X inverse X transpose Y, right? Just random math.
Yeah.
And, and then I got into the field because I was like, oh, look, I like statistics and quant stuff. Let me pick a job that's similar to that. And then worked out. And I kept doing that. And then, one of my old colleagues was actually a professor at Columbia at the time when I learned about the program. He said, hey, you should consider pursuing this. And so I did. Okay. And that was what motivated me to go to my second master's. And then, while I've been at Columbia, I've spent most of my time in taking coursework on artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is essentially econometrics but on steroids. And it's been really fun. I really like it. So, it's more of this greedy algorithm where at every step I say, do what makes me happiest right now, right? And saying, like, hopefully that works out in the future.
Yeah.
And so far it has, I would love to do a PhD. Given what I know about people who are PhDs and very successful academics, I don't know if I have the
they're wired a little different.
Well, it's just I don't know if I have what it takes, but I would love to do a PhD and become a professor. But I think right now it's not what I'm looking to do.
Not your immediate future.
Yeah, not in the immediate future.
Francisco, for the last question, a lot of people listening to this podcast, no matter what age, they're struggling with how to be themselves. We live in a society where everyone is sort of depicting themselves to be flawless, and it's really, really hard to be yourself. So for the people listening, what is your greatest advice to sort of liberating yourself from all the insecurities and worries and burden of trying to keep up with this, perfect image that some people portray?
No, that's a wonderful question. God, that's really a good thought. I'm a pretty transparent person about myself in the sense that, I know my weaknesses and my strengths, and I never tell someone I don't have weaknesses because I do. And I think our society and the way that we absorb media and the way we absorb content, we have these depictions of archetypes in the media that, like, they're just perfect, right? And whether it's aesthetically or intellectually or some other way, they're just perfect, right? These gods of some sort. And that's not real. Yeah. That's not what it's like. Everybody has their own crap, Yeah. Prince Harry has his own problems just in the same way I have my own problems, right? He's bald. That sucks, right? Like, that's... everybody has problems. And I think that, the way that we look at Instagram, we look at Facebook, and we look at Twitter and all these things, we ignore all the bad stuff. We only focus on the good. We have this image, this projection of what life is. It's misleading. And so trying to portray yourself like that is just going to lead to unhappiness in life. So me personally, I just say, hey, look, Sometimes I'm good at things. Sometimes I'm really sucky at things. In fact, most of the time I'm really sucky at things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because not everybody's good at everything, and then that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to accept that and be content with who you are, what you have, and you'll strive for better, try to learn more and be a more well-rounded and better person. But it's okay to be wrong sometimes. It's okay to not know something. It's okay to be fallible. We're human. By definition, we're fallible.
Right.
And I think it's, for one's own happiness, one should simply admit that one is going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. I think if you accept that and don't beat yourself up too bad when bad things happen, you'll be all right.
Yeah.
I mean, push yourself, but not too much.
Well, thanks so much, Francisco. If people want to contact you regarding data science, and where should they locate you?
I have a website they can reach out. You Google my name, I'll be the first thing to come up, I promise.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Francisco. Really appreciate it. And I know your story is going to inspire a lot of people. And, just me personally, I've seen your growth, and I've seen the work that you're putting in. So just congratulations, and keep it going.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. And likewise for you. You've done wonderful work here.
Thanks a lot.